People who hate capitalism and want to take away your economic freedom have some new ideas. You might be old enough to remember back in 1989 when the Berlin Wall fell. After all but 4 of the old socialist dictatorships went belly up, it seemed like a new dawn and a new era of freedom. But now there's a resurgence of interest in rebooting socialism using the technology of artificial intelligence. On today's episode, I'm going to look past the 100 or so million who died under communism during the 20th century. I'm going to try to give a true and accurate rundown of the new socialist theories of Cyber Marxism and what they're all about. Then, before I'm hauled off to the gulag, I'll tell you my own take on the new theories that are brewing. Spoiler alert, I'm an entrepreneur owner of a YouTube channel called AI Capitalist. Now, I don't usually waste time on politics because it's a huge time suck with a zero return on investment. But as a business leader, you need to know about these ideas because, like the wealth tax or UBI, ideas tend to kick around in academia for a while before politicians pick them up and try to put them into practice. But if they catch on, you may have to make adjustments to your own operating strategy in a big hurry. I'm Evan Goldstein, licensed professional engineer and data scientist, and I built this channel to help business leaders deploy the new technology of artificial intelligence into their operations. And yes, I am old enough to remember the fall of the Berlin Wall. Once it was revealed just how poor, grim, and unpleasant life behind the Iron Curtain had become, it seemed clear as day that free market capitalism was the way to go. I know a lot of Russians who moved to the United States after the fall of communism. I have never met a socialist Russian. But since the financial crash of 2008, there has been a renewed interest in socialism in this country. In fact, according to a Pew poll, over a third of Americans have a positive view of socialism. It's not entirely clear what the respondents consider socialism to actually be. But I will say that in the United States, the waters have been muddied by politicians on both sides of the aisle. Politicians here now use the term socialism to describe any social safety net or welfare programs. Sometimes people on the left refer to the Scandinavian countries as socialist, when they're really just free market countries with heavy regulation and large welfare programs. The actual definition of socialism, as it was defined by the inventor of communism, Karl Marx, not that Marx, is that the means of production, so factories and companies, as well as the banks and financial institutions, are controlled by the community as a whole. People are then theoretically paid out to meet their needs. Karl Marx believed that eventually this would lead to a system of government called communism in which no one would own personal property. So it's not clear if the people being polled about socialism actually understand that it's not just about a welfare state, but assuming they do, the poll numbers reveal that socialism is gaining popularity, especially amongst women and young people. So now for a brief history of socialism. There have been over 180 attempts to make it work, and you will not find one developed, wealthy, or democratic country among them. Only 4 of these states still exist, and one of them, China, is teetering on the brink of collapse. Socialism crashes into a few problems when enacted, and I'm going to point out the big 2. Because people are paid based on their needs and not their labor, there's no incentive to produce. I'm not going to work, and the garbage man isn't going to pick up the trash, and the electrician isn't going to keep the power on if we all get paid the same whether we work hard or not. And because of this, no one does anything in socialist countries. Nothing gets done, the standard of living drops. The people are represented by the state, which takes control of businesses. The representative of the state who is running the business is still a human being. He's still going to have to look after his own interests before those of the other workers. Socialist economies have always degenerated into bastions of corruption and embezzlement because of this. So for now, this has been a review for a lot of people. But what Cyber Marxism promises to do is to merge the technology of AI with Marxism to eliminate these problems. In terms of providing for your needs, Marxism always worked on the adage of to each according to his needs, from each according to his abilities. Companies already collect huge amount of data on what you do and what you consume. In Cyber Marxist theory, just like in classical Marxist theory, the transition to a socialist economy is inevitable. In Cyber Marxism, as the story goes, as AI continues to replace workers, and you can see my video on that here, AI would be able to use the vast amounts of personal data already being collected to predict people's needs. It could rapidly calculate exactly how many products to produce in a factory on a given day. It could properly allocate resources based on consumption records and personal data. Because the AI would be algorithm-based, it would not be influenced by the same base greed and self-interest that caused socialism to fail the previous 180 times. Okay, so until now I've done my best to do justice to Cyber Marxist theory, and now I'm going to give you my own take on it as a data scientist. Just like classical Marxism, cyber Marxism makes some legitimate criticisms of capitalism, but it also makes the same mistakes. When the state controls the economy, it doesn't fail because the leaders are stupid and the people are smart. It fails because the people have relevant knowledge of their own situation and bureaucrats don't. Government officials ruling over millions of people don't have the time or ability to figure out what would work in your personal situation for each individual among millions of citizens in a country. They only have the blanket policies that sound smart on paper. Marxism results in a top-down authoritarian system, whether that's a human dictator or an all-powerful AI algorithm. In some ways, this can be very comforting. My bed doesn't make itself, my collection of stamps doesn't organize itself, and it might seem like an economy can't function optimally without a strong hand to guide it. But as seems to be true in so many other cases, and as we're going to see in future episodes discussing the pros and cons of various algorithms, evolved systems are inherently stronger than planned systems. Competition of many different ideas interacting with the market just provides so many more opportunities for new concepts and updates to existing products, processes, and plans. Think of Marxism as a religious dogma and free market as scientific experimenting, rejecting and accepting hypotheses as they're tested in the real world. People's needs and wants are rooted in their fears and hopes. As we talked about in an earlier video on AI failure, what AI lacks is emotional intelligence. It can calculate some aspects of reasoning, but it's not a black box, and it can't calculate how you feel. One of the ways socialism ruled the economy was through price controls. But as the economist Milton Friedman pointed out, even in the socialist economy, the only way to know how much a loaf of bread actually costs is to peek into the free market economies and figure out what they're charging. When the government mandates bread be sold at a certain price without regard to the rest of the market, as in Venezuela, producers are ordered to produce bread that costs them $4 per loaf, but they can only sell it for $3. Bread makers go out of business and everybody starves. In a free market system, sales recommendation algorithms try to predict what you want and need. They do so by looking at the decisions that other customers similar to you have made, and then using these to figure out what you yourself probably want. As you accept or reject suggestions, the algorithm is able to continuously correct itself until it builds a model that is personal to you. But under a command economy, your needs and wants have to be decided for you by an algorithm. You have no input. So there's no data for the algorithm to use to determine what you want. Without this information, the only way for an algorithm to determine what you want is to have a human programmer create the data that will then be fed into the AI system to determine your needs and wants. You see where this is going, right? The government bureaucrat has just been replaced by a government programmer. Human programmers have the same self-interest as any other human, and so we're back where we started. And this brings up one of the darker potential aspects of artificial intelligence. In gathering this information, data collection has already pushed way further than we realized into the intimate details of our personal lives. We don't push back, probably because we can't see or don't understand just how much information about us is being gathered and traded. The carrot of socialism is that it will figure out what people need and provide for all of their needs. But in reality, once governments take power over the economy, they're unable or uninterested in figuring out what people think their own self-interest really is. Since they can't figure out the carrot, they reach for the stick. Socialist governments typically institute a terror state in order to get people back to running the farms, collecting the trash, and doing all the other things that have to happen. The terror state typically includes a network of prisons and forced labor camps. Of course, it also needs a surveillance state in which everyone is tracked and monitored to hunt for dissidents. Now, Marxism creates a religious conviction that revolution in a Marxist system are simply a matter of fate. But what does the future actually hold? A socialist workers' paradise, or a socialist dystopia? A thriving capitalist economy, or maybe a capitalist system with millions of jobless poor? An elite cadre with incredible wealth? Right now, the political right is clinging to nationalism and the left to socialism, just like in the 1920s. With all the changes in technology and demography, and climate and energy, I think something new is being born. If you have any idea what that might be, you can leave a comment below. And keep watching AI Capitalist so we can explore where this artificial intelligence technology is taking us.